Hello, everyone. Welcome to Connecting with Ideas. What are the chances? CWI 101. We had questions about, remember, 5 branches of philosophy, metaphysics, and some of our questions were, what is reality? Is there another reality? Who am I? Do I have a soul? Is there a God? And we had Socrates and Plato. I'm lumping them together because I'm not enough of an authority on philosophy to be able to distinguish their ideas. There are philosophers who do, definitely. And we had not gotten very far. We had talked for Socrates and Plato about the world of forms. And this is already in your notes. I'm just kind of writing this as a placeholder. We said that it was permanent, unchangeable, and perfect. And then our world is a shadow or reflection of the world of forms. So let's talk about Aristotle in that regard. Aristotle also believed in forms, but his forms were a little different. I'm going to use this Southeast Asian slogan. Same, but different. So yes, he had a world of forms. His forms were a little different, and I don't want to go into a lot of details because I'm not going to talk about Aristotle's forms a lot. We don't need to know it right now. One of the differences in his forms, in your notes from last week, Socrates and Plato believed that the forms were permanent, unchangeable, and perfect. In Aristotle's view, the forms weren't permanent. So the idea is if you were able, you go out in the field and you see an animal and it's running across and neighing and you think, oh, that's a horse. And the idea is you recognize that it's a horse because it shares some elements. It's a shadow or reflection of the form, capital F, the form of the horse. Maybe you'd use a capital H on horse. The horse. There's the horse, which is perfect, unchangeable, eternal, permanent in the world of forms. And you go, according to Socrates and Plato, you go outside and you see a horse and you go, oh, a horse. And you recognize it because it has some familiarity to you, because it reminds you of the form of the horse. And you think, how did I know the form of the horse? Well, you saw it. We'll get to that when we get down here a little farther to epistemology. So anyway, Aristotle is different because he says, well, if you got rid of that horse, and you think, well, that's a mean thing to do. Yeah, but if you did, and then if you got rid of all the horses in the world, and then you got rid of every statue of a horse, right? There's George Washington on a horse in our state capitol building. Yeah, get rid of that one, and then get rid of Black Beauty and My Friend Flicka, because those are movies about horses, and get rid of every possible image of a horse and every writing about a horse, a drawing, a statue, all the actual horses. The old Eohippus, right? That's a fossilized horse. It's I wanted to say dinosaur, but of course it's a mammal. It's not a dinosaur, but it's really, really old. The ancient horses. Get rid of all the horses. In Aristotle's view, then the form of the horse would not exist. Or alternatively, invent something new, right? So Steve Jobs in 2007, they came out with the iPhone, and this was a new thing. Well, now there is a form of the iPhone, right? And there's the perfect iPhone, and we recognize our own iPhones because, well, they're kind of like the iPhone, which is perfect, and ours aren't exactly. Mine doesn't have quite as much battery life as I like, and wouldn't it be nice if it had more memory and things like that? Wouldn't it be nice if you could drop it from the roof of your building and it would still be okay? Well, yeah, in the world of forms, there's an iPhone like that. And ours is kind of a reflection, kind of a shadow. And now there is one. Socrates and Plato would have said there always was a form of the iPhone. And Aristotle would say, no, it came along when the iPhone was first created. And so their forms are just a little bit different, but most of it is the same. And who am I? Well, thanks for asking. You are a shadow or a reflection, however you like to think of it. That's kind of the same idea, but kind of different, of the form of man, unless you're female, in which case you're a reflection of the form of woman. And yeah, there's a form. And are you perfect? No. Are you unchangeable? Oh, no. Are you permanent? No. But yeah, that's because you aren't the form. You're you. And what would be the best you that you can be, right? That's the Army slogan. Be all that you can be. Well, all that you could be would be to be more like the form of, in my case, a man, right? And so I guess I should get off the couch more often and do a few more push-ups and work on some of my muscles. I could eat just a little less chocolate than I eat. I'm not horribly out of shape, but I'm a nerd. I'm a college professor, and I'm a certain age, and so there's a limit. I could also think like a man, right? I do things, manly things. Are there manly thoughts or womanly thoughts? This starts turning into, wait a second, is there some sexism in this? Yeah, it's ancient Greece. Of course, there's some sexism. Socrates and Plato, by the way, were amazingly non-sexist in some of the things, and we'll see that in a few minutes. But yeah, there's going to be sexism. There's going to be nascent racism. There's going to be all kinds of isms that we don't appreciate nowadays. These cultures were different, right? The ancient Romans, if they had a baby and they didn't like it, well, you set it out on the side of the road. And if someone picks it up, great. And if someone doesn't, great. If an animal comes along and eats it, great. And you think, I'm not going to put it by the side of the road. Okay, take it out in the woods then and leave it. That was their idea. Family planning. We do things differently nowadays. Is our way better or worse? Let's not go there. Aristotle, same thing, right? Forms. What about a soul? So Socrates and Plato, do you have a soul? Yes. You have a permanent, let's just say an immortal soul. The soul never dies, according to Plato and Socrates, in a physical body. And what did Aristotle say about souls? Well, Aristotle has all kinds of stuff. He has lots of writings about souls. Aristotle described in his writings, he had an entire book about souls. Remember, Socrates and Plato wrote these dialogues with Socrates as a person talking, and once in a rare while, Plato will appear in one of these books. But usually Plato's not. He's just the invisible observer, and he says, Socrates said this, and then Glaucon said this, and then Socrates answered him this way and asked him a question, and Glaucon responded, and they go back and forth like that. And Plato's rarely a character in any of these dialogues. What I had said was, it's kind of annoying because the dialogues aren't systematic. And so the conversations can be desultory. They can jump from topic to topic. And typically the name of a dialogue is the name of the person he was talking to. And so there's the Crito, and you think, Crito, yeah, that was a guy's name. And Io, that was a guy's name. And lots of things like that. And you have to dig around to find, oh, this is the book where Socrates talks about the soul. Aristotle has a book, it's called On the Soul, and it's all about souls. And yeah, so Aristotle was much more structured. I think I've mentioned before, Aristotle was the one who came up with these categories. He said, here's what philosophy is. It's metaphysics, it's epistemology, it's, and he named those 5. So lots of writings about souls, more than a couple books. Aristotle thought that there were 3 kinds of souls, right? Depending on like plant souls, and then animal souls, which are a little better, and then human souls, those are the best. And if you want more details, of course, you can go and read any of that stuff you like. I encourage you, take a class. I think you'll enjoy philosophy. We have great philosophy professors here at CWI. Is there a God? So Socrates says, no, not really. But let's tell people there are, because it's good for them, right? They have someone to look up to. Socrates had a technical word for this kind of story about the gods that would lead people to emulate. He called this a myth. And you think, oh yeah, myth. Oh, myth. Oh, right. And of course, myth was a word. What we say is a myth. It didn't exactly come from what Socrates and Plato said. It was a Greek word, and it had a meaning. But Socrates specifically said, these are myths. One idea Socrates had, he believed in censorship, right? The government should control what books are printed. Not printed, of course, in his day, but which books are written, which books are available, which books can be copied by hand, because that's how they did it. He thought that Homer's Iliad and Odyssey, which are, of course, these Greek myths, you probably read some sections, probably of the Odyssey, in high school, and he thought they should be rewritten because, they don't put the gods in a very good light. They bicker, they're crass, they're petty. And Socrates thought gods shouldn't be like that. So let's rewrite them so that people can admire the gods and act like the gods. It would be good for them. Aristotle says, well, is there a God? Well, not exactly, not in the way, especially nowadays, if you grow up in 21st century America and you're a Christian or a Muslim or a Buddhist or a Hindu or whatever, there's not a God like that, but there's a chain of causes, right? And so let's go into the Enlightenment times. They talked a lot about causes, and the model they always use is billiard balls. And of course, Aristotle didn't, but I'm going to draw the chain back in the same similar sort of way. So a billiard ball moves across the table and goes in the pocket, right? And why did that billiard ball move? Well, the cue ball hit it. Well, why did the cue ball move? Well, because this stick hit it, the cue stick. And why did the cue stick move? Well, because it was attached to my hand. I was holding onto it and I moved my hand back and forth. Well, why did your hand move? Well, because in my mind, I sent a nervous impulse right down, synapse. And anyway, there's some physiological reason my hand moved. And well, why did your mind do this? Well, I was thinking that I wanted the cue ball to go in the pocket because I have this bet and I want to buy a new car and I need the money. And why do you need it? And you can go back and keep asking, well, why did that? Why did that? Why did that? And there's this chain of movements, right? In my mind, there's a movement and it's all movement. And if you follow this back all the way, you don't get to God, but you get to an unmoved mover, right? This is the thing that the cause of all causes. That's more of a Hindu phrase than a Greek philosophy phrase. An unmoved mover. The thing that started it all. It didn't move, but it moved everything else. And so Aristotle talks about this. Honestly, I think his ideas about God are a little bit fuzzy. Yeah, I think they are. But, he didn't ask me. And maybe they're fuzzy because I don't understand them. But sometimes philosophers will say, yeah, we're not exactly sure what Aristotle was thinking when he talked about God. Aristotle had this really neat idea, and it deserves a page of its own. We just talked about causes, and Aristotle, his metaphysics was very, very clever. What did I say before? Alfred North Whitehead said that all philosophy consists of nothing but footnotes to Plato. And in a sense, that's even true of Aristotle. But if you can only read one, you don't want to read just one. Aristotle did some really clever stuff. Who do I like better? I like Aristotle better, I guess. So here's some things about Aristotle's metaphysics that are different. This is one of the clever things he did. It had the four causes. And one of the things he said was, you don't know anything. You don't know about a thing. And the thing, it doesn't have to be a thing. It could be a person or an idea or a energy or, but whatever you are talking about, you don't know about anything unless you understand its four causes. Because he said everything has four causes. And the example he always gave, or at least that he gave in his book, and so this is a typical, what is a ship? And you think to yourself, I know what a ship is. Well, so Fred says, hey, buddy, I got a ship. You should come down to the dock tomorrow. We'll go sailing in my ship. And you go down to the dock, and Aristotle says, well, a ship has a material cause. And what is a ship made out of? Well, in those days, it was made out of wood, and there was probably some cloth for the sails, some fabric. There's probably some rope. There's probably some, what do you call that? The black stuff, pitch or tar. Yeah. And there's, whatever's, maybe a nail. I don't know if they used nails in those days very often. But whatever you have to do to make a ship, well, that's it. And you get down to the dock, and there's Fred, and he says, hey, you ready? And you look around, and you say, I don't see any ship. And he points on the dock, and there's this pile of wood and fabric and rope and a bucket of pitch. And you say, Fred, this isn't a ship. He says, yeah, this is a ship. This is what a ship is made of. And you say, Fred, it has to be combined. You can't just lay the stuff out on a pier, on a dock. You have to it's designed in a way. Okay, so Aristotle says this is the formal cause, right? And this is kind of related to the word form. It's got to be put together a certain way. And so the next weekend, Fred says, hey, I took to heart what you said about my ship. I guess it wasn't a ship. It does need to have a design. So come on down and we'll go sailing. And you go down and there's the same pile of wood and fabric and rope and pitch, except now there's a blueprint on top, right? Now he has a formal cause. This is how you put it together. You said it has to be put together. And so there you go. Let's go sailing. And you say, Fred, this is like crazy. You can't just have the stuff and the plans. You actually have to do it. And so Aristotle says this is the efficient cause. You realize, I hope, that Aristotle's version didn't have Fred in it. I'm just making this up. You actually have to do it. You actually have to put it together. You have to follow the plan and assemble the different material components. So that's the efficient cause. And when you're finally done, and this is the most important to Aristotle. I mean, the rest of these things, yeah, you can't have a ship without this. But really, what's the why? What's the cause of the ship? And that's the final cause. The Greek word for end, like the final thing, the end, the purpose, is telos. And so there's this whole branch of philosophy called teleology, which is the why. What's it for? What's its end? What's its purpose? What's a ship for? And there are all different sorts of purposes, right? In Fred's case, his ship is for pleasure, right? We're going to sail around the bay. We're going to get on this ship and we're going to have a nice Sunday afternoon. We'll go out, maybe we'll catch a couple fish, we'll drink some beers. Fred. Someone else might have a ship because, well, they're going to catch whales, and so you have a Japanese whaler. It's a very different sort of ship and a whole different raison d'etre, a whole different reason for existing. Someone else has a ship, it's an oil tanker, and someone else has a ship, it's a speedboat, right, for water skiing, and someone else has a ship. Anyway, what's it for? What's the purpose behind it? And Aristotle says, this is important if you want to understand something. For example, it doesn't have to be a ship. Maybe it's yourself. And so you could do some of this Socratic, Platonic introspection. Well, we know what you're made of. You're made of carbon and hydrogen and oxygen and some nitrogen, a little bit of calcium, probably less than you think. There's those elements. That's what you are. Yeah, but what's the formal cause? What's the plans? And this wasn't understood for a long, long time. But now we know, it's DNA, right? There's a double helix molecule that's in every single cell of your body, and it has a blueprint, an actual blueprint. Well, it's not blue and it's not printed. But as I say, it's an actual blueprint, yeah, except it's not, of you, right? If you wanted to make another you, and we don't have the technology for this, but yeah, we could, space aliens who are more advanced than us, they could make one of you if they had a copy of your DNA. And then what? Yeah, it does have to be put together somehow. And so how's this? Well, your mother ate some food and, the food went into you, and you were put together following this blueprint. And initially, at least, all the materials, the wood and fabric and rope and pitch that makes up you, came from your mother's biological system. Anyway, it was all put together, and you're still making you because you eat every day, you breathe, you respire. You breathe in and breathe out. You drink water, other liquids. You might hit the gym, and that helps put you together. It changes the shape of you. But then here's the question Aristotle wants to ask is, yeah, okay, that's fine. I understand this stuff. There's your physiology. There's your body. That's the biochemistry of it. But what are you for? What's the purpose of you? Oh, now we're talking, right? Does this suddenly become interesting? I'm not going to make suggestions because I don't know you. And, everyone has suggestions. I do have an idea, and you have an idea. Your parents have an idea, at least if they were like my parents. Society has an idea, right? Culture has an idea. Oh, who should decide? Yeah, this is a good question. Maybe it's already decided. But there is Aristotle's Metaphysics, and he has this idea of the four causes. And I think it's a very, very clever idea. And you might try this, when you go out to your car today. Well, I was going to say you get done with class and you go out to your car. No, most of you are sitting in your kitchen, so you're not going to go out to your car. Okay. But if you were sometime in the near future to go out to your car, you might, as you approach it, start thinking about this, well, what's my car made of? And the blueprints, okay, there was an engineer in Detroit or Tokyo or wherever that planned it out, maybe in Berlin, and they put it together. And how was that done? Well, there was that automobile factory in Tennessee, and they've got an assembly line, and yeah, people did that. And then, yeah, but what's it for? What's the purpose of the car? What's it really supposed to do? And you might think of side effects too. Anyway, this is all kind of interesting stuff. The next branch of philosophy, Aristotle invented these branches. He named them and organized them, structured them. That's why I kind of like Aristotle a bit better. You know, I probably, well, no, I don't know. Never mind. Epistemology is questions of knowledge. Episteme is the Greek word for knowledge. So how do we know stuff? And this isn't like, I'm trying to think of an example that doesn't involve the current presidential election, but it popped into my mind, you know, there was an election last week and somebody won. And you say, well, wait, who won? When you say somebody, like which of the two guys? Yeah, one of them won. And you could say, well, how do you know? Well, that's not exactly what we're meaning here. This is in general. This is philosophy, right? Philosophy is much more general. It goes not to the specific so much as the bases. So, you know, how do you know not who won the election, but how do you know anything at all? And Socrates and Plato, I'm just going to write SP because I'm lazy. For you, you've probably just extended these lines, right? You've got the lines and you've written and just keep going down the page. And when you get to the top of the next page, do this again. I had to make a whole new chart with new headings, but you don't need to repeat the headings. Just put in the questions at the side. I could have just written A. Wouldn't that have saved me time? So the idea that Socrates and Plato had, their teachings, Socrates' teachings were that we were exposed to the world of forms. We've been there. We came from there in a certain sense. Just before you were born, someone took your soul and they walked it through the world of forms. And they said, see, this is a horse. See, this is an iPhone. See, this is a man. See, this is, you know, all those things. And it would be great, except, you know, birth is kind of a traumatic experience. We've forgotten. We don't remember any of that stuff. I mean, next time you see a baby, ask him, hey, what was the form of the horse like? What was the form of a triangle like? And the baby will go, yeah. I mean, you're not going to get much because, you know, it's a traumatic experience. But what happens is sometimes we recognize stuff. We talked about, what was it, cue dependency in our memory units. We talked about if someone gives you just the right hint, then you go, oh, right, yeah, it was Edgar Allan Poe. I remember now. And they give you the hint, and it pops into your mind. And the same sort of thing happens, that you see a horse and the form of the horse, it kind of pops into your mind, and there's some recognition you have. So sometimes we recognize stuff because we remember a bit. Take a philosophy class. You'll get a much better explanation of all of this stuff that I'm doing. But there's kind of the general idea. What does Aristotle say about knowledge? Well, Aristotle actually wrote a book. He wrote several books on logic. One is titled Logic, and the thing that Aristotle invented, or wrote about at least, was this idea of syllogisms. I think last week or 2 weeks ago, you had a reading from the Purdue Owl about syllogisms. I hope you did that. And you also read some things about logical fallacies, right? So there are ways of doing syllogisms wrong. There are ways of making mistakes in reasoning. But Aristotle was a big proponent of logic. And it's, I was going to say thanks to him, but yeah, really, seriously, thanks to him. If someone is trying to convince you of something and they give you an argument and you say, no, that doesn't follow, we could trace this process, this discussion you're having, all the way back to Aristotle's writings on logic. Is there truth? You know, maybe there isn't a truth. You know, people know different stuff and people have different ideas, and maybe there isn't a right idea and a wrong idea. Was that possible? No, it's not possible. Socrates says, yes, there's a truth. And what is the truth? It's the world of forms. Naturally, what else would it be? The world of forms. That's what's true. I'm skipping a lot, right? I'm skipping a lot. I'm not going to say anything about Aristotle and his idea of truth. Well, yeah, there's a truth, because things that follow syllogistic reasoning are true. You can come up with true conclusions. You can actually know things. And, I've given you one sentence, and Aristotle wrote a lot more than that one sentence. We are on to the third branch of philosophy, ethics. What should I do? What's the good life? What are the virtues? And what you should do, according to Socrates, is, right, he said the unexamined life is not worth living. Maybe I'll write that. You should become a philosopher. You should think about this stuff. I mean, seriously, you should. You'll be a lot better off if you think about this stuff. I mean, I don't want to, sometimes when I say these things, I make it sound like, oh, this is silly stuff. I think Socrates is probably right. You do have to perform some introspection. You do have to think about yourself. You do have to question what you're doing, question your values, question your morals, question your thoughts. And you don't want to be neurotic about it, of course, but yeah, you are important enough that you deserve some examination. It's a topic that should be explored, and you should be the one to explore it. Meditate on the forms. I don't know exactly how this is done, by the way. What does Aristotle say? Let me go on to virtues first. What are the virtues? And there's a list, Plato and Socrates. You could Google for it. And there's a list. Courage is a virtue, and temperance is a virtue, and different things. There's a list of 4 big ones and so many smaller ones. I don't want to list them all right now. The important thing that Socrates said is that virtue, and this is what virtue meaning good behavior, doing what is right. Virtue is a result of knowledge. If you know what is right, then you'll do what is right. And if you do what is wrong, if you are immoral, if you are unethical, then the only explanation for that is you didn't know better, only because of ignorance. This is an interesting idea. This is a really interesting idea. And so, you have someone who does some horrible thing. Think of someone, and you just pick up the newspaper, look at the front page. Someone did some horrible thing. You could just find it. They did it because they didn't know. And what would be the best solution? Well, teach them so that they know. That's one of the reasons you want to become a philosopher. So you know, then you're going to be virtuous. You're going to do what's right. You're going to do the very best thing. You'll be happy, right? You'll have a good life. Aristotle's ideas, I'm going to write it up here just because it takes some more space, but it's actually, I'm going to write it up here, but it's the virtue question. For Aristotle, he does list some virtues, and he talks about virtues, but often virtues are, and this is a lovely, lovely phrase, it's a neat idea. You can decide later if he was right or not. A lot of people says he's not. But virtues are golden means. And so I mentioned courage as being an example. So let's do an example. So here's courage, and I'm kind of writing it a little small in the middle. If you don't have enough courage, then you're a coward, right? And so this is a vice. This is not a virtue, cowardice. And then if you have too much courage, you leap before you look. That would be rashness, right? And you say, oh, Fred, the problem with Fred is he just doesn't think before he does stuff. He goes off half-cocked. He jumps into things when he's not ready. And it's almost a Goldilocks theory, right? You don't have enough, and you have too much, and the courage is just right. So going to another one of the Socratic Platonic virtues, I mentioned temperance. Temperance is, it's eating just the right amount of stuff. It's drinking just the right amount of stuff. How's the saying go? Eat to live, don't live to eat. And if you use this model, well, temperance is just right. And if you don't have enough temperance, self-restraint, you have no self-restraint, you're 400 pounds and you're sitting on a couch that's kind of dented because you're so heavy. Your life is horrible. And if you have too much self-restraint, well, then you're you're what? You're one of those medieval monks. You're wearing a hair shirt to punish your body, and you self-flagellate. You whip yourself, as uh, to restrict the amount of pleasure you have. You fast a lot. You go without food, and you're unhealthy and you're unhappy, and this isn't a very, very good thing. But if you have just the right amount, yeah, then you're healthy. So there's an example of temperance, and you could go through most of the other, and Aristotle does this. He has several books on virtues, on ethics. It's funny because several of them have different place names in the title, and you could look up to see why that is. But he talks about virtues as being golden means. The other thing, I mentioned happiness. Aristotle famously taught that you can't know if you're happy. You can't actually know, really, until you're dead, right? Until the end of your life. And he gives this famous story about these two brothers and how they saved their mother. They were visiting a temple for some ceremony. You should look it up. I don't have time to tell it to you, but it's good stuff. I think that's all we need to say about ethics. Let's go on to ethics in a social setting, which Aristotle characterized as politics. And here, there's so much I could say. Plato wrote a book called The Republic. It's usually called Plato's Republic. It's not a place. It's not like, the Republic, go there. It's a thought experiment. What should I do? Same as ethics, except you're not alone. So what should I do in a social setting? And what's the best government? What's the best form of government? And you know that different people have different ideas. People have been arguing about this for a long, long time. Plato and Socrates and Aristotle. Plato's Republic. Let's mention Plato's Republic. This is a book. It's a long conversation. It starts off with Socrates is at some gathering. In my mind, I'm thinking it's almost a party. Anyway, a bunch of people in some house, and Socrates is sitting, and there's a guy there, and he says, "Hey, guy," I can't remember who's first. I want to say it's Glaucon, but I'm not sure if Glaucon is the first or the second. Anyway, he says, "What do you think justice is?" Person has an answer, and Socrates said, "Oh, well, do you think then, oh, no, wait, no, I don't think that. I see what you're getting at. No, I guess I mean," and Socrates says, "Well, then it would be like this," and the person says, "Oh, wait, no, I guess I'm still not quite right." And it's a beautiful, beautiful book to read. It's very accessible. You don't even have to think of it as being, this is a philosophy book, it's going to be heavy. No, it's kind of a conversation between this older fellow who's pretty wise but doesn't think he necessarily knows everything, and younger people, and he's trying to draw out the knowledge from them, right? Draw out. Why? Because they already have the knowledge. They've seen the world of forms. They need to be reminded of it. This is what education is. Education comes from the Latin word educare, which means to lead out. We're trying to lead out the knowledge, right? There's education. And if you don't think, "Oh, I don't have it in my mind already," well, then you have a different idea of education. And maybe the Latin word, the metaphor they used, isn't appropriate for you. Training, that's what I mean. Yeah, training. It's not like they already know how to do it. I have to train them. I can't educate them. I can't draw out the knowledge. But anyway, Plato's Republic is this conversation, and after a while, Socrates says, "Well, let's see if we can think about people." And so he has the small letters and the big letters, right? And you have what do I have? I have a small p, politics. And then I have a capital P, Plato, and everything that's in the capital P is in the small p, right? And it's just let's write it bigger because then we can understand it. We can see it more easily. And so he gives this analogy, and he says, in order to understand a person and what's just for a person, let's talk about society at large. And so they have this thought experiment. And they say, well, the first thing you need is some people, and they have to eat. So your society has to have farmers, and the farmers, well, they can't run around the fields naked. And so you need someone to make cloth, and well, if you're having farmers and cloth makers, you need somebody to make tools, and then I guess they have to go inside at night. So someone has to build houses. You need house builders, and then the people that, and it grows like this. And he develops this whole society, and it's kind of fun to read. I read it when I was a lot younger, and it really impressed me that that's cool. And eventually you get to the leaders, right? Because someone has to run this society. And so Plato's Republic describes a society and the government ruled by, this will surprise you, benevolent dictators. Yeah, we're not going to let you decide. If you live in Plato's Republic, you don't get to choose what the laws are. Someone else is going to choose the laws for you. And you think, well, I can at least vote for. No, you don't vote for squat. It's not a democracy. You don't have a say in the matter. Who are these dictators? You can guess, right? It's Socrates after all. They're the philosopher kings. And so, yeah, they're kings. They're ruling, but they're ruling because they should be ruling. They are philosophers, right? They're philosophers. They know the forms. They've done this meditation I'm talking about. They know exactly what a horse is. They know exactly what a triangle is. They know exactly what a person is. And so they know what's best for you. And they'll tell you what to do, and you just dang well better do it. I don't know if I want to live in a society like that. We have that. We have a sense of that, right? There's a certain mayor of New York who knows that it's bad for you to drink too much sugary soda because, you get fat. It's not good for your health. And so, since this mayor knows what is best for you, the law is that cups at restaurants can only be a certain size. There's a maximum size for soft drinks in this. You know what city I'm talking about. I don't have to name it. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if I want to be there. I kind of like free and easy. Let me choose for myself. Well, Plato's Republic wasn't like that. You can imagine all sorts of problems with these philosopher kings, right? It's like, yeah, but they're human beings, right? Well, yeah, but they're philosophers, and so they know. Yeah, but they're human beings. They're going to be prejudiced, and they're going to give their children the best jobs. There will be nepotism. And you think of like Saddam Hussein, he was a dictator and he had two sons, and you read the accounts and it was just horrible, the stuff they did. And they got away with it, because they're the sons of the dictator. And Plato had a solution, Socrates had a solution for this. Well, yeah, that's fine. The philosopher kings, they won't know who their children are. You think, how does someone not know who their children are? Because the woman was having sex with so many men, they're not sure and you think, wait, what? So it's like free love. No, it's not free love. What we're going to do is we're going to have a lottery, right? And so we'll draw straws, and Fred, you're sleeping with Mary. George, you're sleeping with Elizabeth, and it'll be like this, and it changes from time to time. So you never know who your kids are, and so you're not going to treat them better than all the other kids in this philosopher king's community. And you think, well, that's kind of crazy. Yeah, you haven't heard the crazy yet. This is what they tell everybody. And the philosopher kings even believe it. But what they're really doing, it's not a lottery. It's totally rigged. It's a rigged election. Yeah, now it becomes topical. It's rigged in the sense that what they're really doing, well, you know how you have racehorses. And if you want a really, really fast racehorse, well, then you take two racehorses that are pretty fast and you breed them. And you have hunting dogs. If you want a hunting dog that's really a good hunter, well, you take two hunting dogs that are really, really good and you breed them, right? This is a pedigree. It's like the Kennel Club. And that's what this is like too, is that the people in charge of this lottery, some other philosopher kings, they're looking at everybody and they're thinking, Fred has certain qualities and Mary has certain qualities. We want more of these qualities. Let's breed Fred and Mary together. And you think, breed? You don't breed humans. Oh, yeah, you do. In Plato's Republic, you do. And you're thinking, what the cup? Yeah, I mean, doesn't it? It sends shivers up your spine thinking about, oh, this is creepy. Yeah, it's definitely creepy. Yeah, this is Plato and Socrates. I hate to say bad things about them when they're not here to defend themselves. Read it. See what you think. Aristotle, of course, wrote a book, and his book was not called The Republic, it was called Politics. And the very first sentence of the book Politics says, well, it doesn't say this because it says it in Greek, but if you translate it, it says man is a social animal. And because man is a social animal, certain things naturally follow, right? He's applying logic to this. And he would say, and again, I'm summarizing so much that you could argue and say he didn't say this at all, but probably a constitutional republic, something like that, is the best form of government. When you think of forms of government, you remember in your high school government class, you learned about the democracy and then the oligarchy and the hypocrisy and the monarchy. Did I already say that? And you had all these different ocracies and archies, and there was a page of vocabulary words one week, and you had a quiz on it, and you're thinking, oh, these words are hard. Are they Greek or what? Oh yeah, of course they're Greek. They're out of Aristotle's book on politics. He lists them all out, and he talks about why this one's better and why this one's worse and why this one is kind of okay but kind of middle, and he lists them all. So yeah, for many of you, a year ago, you were studying Aristotle's thought. Aesthetics. So what is beautiful? For Socrates, this is a very simple question to answer. Forms are beautiful. I mean, they are. They're the forms. And you think, well, that's nice, but I mean here. Well, here we have shadows and reflections of the form. And so anything like its form, you know, the horse that's more like the horse, capital H, it's beautiful. And a horse that's not very much like the form of the horse, it's not as beautiful. And this is why some chairs are beautiful, and why some trees are beautiful, and why some people are beautiful, and why some songs are beautiful. Because, you know, they're more like the form of whatever it is. Aristotle, I don't know that he talked a lot about art. He probably did, and I'm just not aware of it. But he does have books about literature. And he has a book about poetics. That title of that book is Poetics. Yeah, so this is a book about poetry and what makes a poem beautiful. What should poems be like? And you think of all of our words about poetry, they're almost all Greek words, right? So we won't talk a lot about that. He also wrote a book about rhetoric. The title of the book is Rhetoric. This is nice that he has titles that reflect their subjects rather than who's talking in them. Yeah, his books weren't dialogues. Some of you know about rhetoric, especially if you're homeschooled. I find that kids have had things about rhetoric if they're homeschooled, but also some of you in your high school English class, if you learned things like the 3 ways to convince someone. There's pathos, there's ethos, there's logos, right? And you think these are weird words. They're almost like they're Greek. Yep, they're Greek, and they came straight out of Aristotle's book on rhetoric. Nowadays we say rhetoric, you know, oh, that's just rhetoric, and we mean it in a negative, it has a negative connotation. We don't like politicians whose speeches are full of rhetoric, but originally the word just meant, you know, the practice of oratory. You can see the R and the T and the R, oratory, rhetoric. And it just meant how to give a good speech, how to convince someone of something, and not for some ulterior motive, but because it's good to convince some people of especially goodness. So there you go, a little introduction. That's our ancient philosophy. Let's move a few hundred years into the future, well, from the past. So we're still quite a ways in the past. We're 2,000 years ago, maybe we're 1,500 years ago. And I want to point out, this is very important, I want to point out that I'm skipping a lot, right? I just did Plato and Socrates, and then I did Aristotle, and now I'm going to jump into the 2nd century AD. So I've just jumped 400 years, and I don't want you to have the impression that there were no philosophers between that time. No, there were a ton of philosophers. Even in ancient Greece, there were philosophers other than Plato and Socrates and Aristotle. There were lots of people doing things, and people whose ideas we still study. We might disagree with them, but we still are interested in what they had to say. So let's move ahead. Where are we moving? We are moving, and that's why I say it has to be 2nd century AD, almost 1st century. We're going to move to early Christianity. And I want to emphasize, I'm not trying to convince you of something, right? I'm not trying to say you should be no, I'm not saying that. A lot of the things the early Christians believed aren't the things that modern Christians believe, and vice versa. I'm not talking about any particular church. I'm not talking about any particular denomination. Why am I even talking about Christianity? And the reason is Christianity is very, very important in the history of ideas. I mean, you can't read Shakespeare if you don't understand a little bit about Christianity. There are things you'll just miss. You can't read John Milton's poetry at all. You can't read things that Thomas Jefferson said in the Declaration of Independence without having some idea of where did these ideas come from. So I'm going to talk about Christianity, but understand, at least for now, for this lecture, I don't have a dog in this fight. You know, if you want to be convinced for or against, I have relatives you could talk to, but that's not me. That's not me today. So in general, the Christians, the early Christians, were Neoplatonic, so Neoplatonism. So remember, Plato came just before Aristotle. Plato was Aristotle's teacher. And Aristotle had some popularity. He was kind of the way to go for several hundred years. And some of the early Christians were kind of They were reviving Plato. They liked Plato's ideas better. And so early Christianity was greatly influenced by Platonism. And some of the ideas of early Christianity didn't come from the Bible, the Old Testament, or the New Testament. They came from what Plato said. They came from what Socrates said. And you can think of this as a good thing or a bad thing. It's up to you. Neoplatonism, Augustine is a big name here. He was a few centuries later. And I'm not going to name some of the others, but Augustine in particular had been a Platonist. He grew up, St. Augustine, interesting fellow. He's left behind several works. He wrote an autobiography called The Confessions, and you could have fun reading it, and you think, fun, why do I want to read something by some ancient bishop, Christian saint? Oh, it's fun because before he became a Christian, he was sort of licentious, you know, and he talks about the affairs he had and the overindulgence in psychotropic substances that he engaged in. I mean, he was a party animal. And so he writes about all of this, and it's probably the first autobiography we have in the history of literature. Is this fellow wrote about himself, and it's kind of interesting. People still read it today. Anyway, after he realized, you know, I can't just be partying all the time and getting women pregnant and then leaving them, and that's not what I should do. I should straighten up and fly right. And so he became a Platonist, and he read Plato's ideas, and he was very, very active in this. And then he became a Manichaean. You don't even know what that is. And then eventually, he became a Christian. But there's a process to all of this, a sequence of events. Metaphysics, so some of the metaphysical ideas that the early church had, metaphysics. There is a God. We're jumping right to the top. There is a God. It's a trinity. And if you believe that or not, it's up to you, but that's what they thought. There is another reality. In fact, there are two other realities, heaven and hell. I'll capitalize them. I'm not sure why. I guess because they're places. They're proper names for places. Heaven and hell. Do you have a soul? Yeah, you are an eternal soul. Before, if you look back in your notes a couple pages, I said that I said that Socrates and Plato said, you are an eternal soul in a physical body. The Christians were a little different. They said, you are an eternal soul and a physical body. And this physical body part is important to them because in Christianity, they believe in a physical resurrection. And by the way, I kind of alluded to this idea of the eternal soul. I don't think you can probably find it very well. I mean, yeah, you can, but ancient Judaism, no, they didn't really have the idea of an eternal soul. I don't know if, I mean, it would be hard to convince me that Jesus or Paul, those are the two principal writers of early Christianity in the New Testament, I'm not sure either one of them believed in an eternal soul. Right? There's stories they tell, but I don't know. Most people, a lot of people would tell you, scholars on this, that the idea of the eternal soul in Christianity came not from the New Testament directly, but from Socrates and Plato, from the Neoplatonists. And there are good reasons, if I don't have any axe to grind here. What about this world? Well, this world is fallen, right? Reality. This world is fallen because of Adam and Eve. And one of these days, right, there will be the new Jerusalem and the new earth. This is all in the book of Revelation. This word. This world is fallen. Yeah, Adam and Eve, original sin. You could go on and on and on. I don't want to. Epistemology. How do you know stuff? Well, revelation, right? God tells you stuff. Some of it's been recorded. There's a Bible. Some of it is in the hands of the church, what the modern Catholics call the magisterium, the teaching authority. There's a certain amount of faith involved. Ethics. 10 Commandments. Yep. What should you do? You should follow the 10 Commandments. Don't steal. Don't kill. Don't covet your neighbor's wife. Honor your parents. There's the 10 Commandments. Even better, right? This is the modernized, generalized version. There's the golden rule. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. This is kind of a nice rule. In general, what should you do? You should become a Christian, right? You have to be baptized. You have to make a statement of faith of some kind. You have to be good. It's not like, oh, I'm baptized, I can do whatever the heck I want. And eventually, what? Go to heaven. Go to heaven. Can I squeeze it in? I don't know if you can even read it. Go to heaven. Yeah, when you're done, you go to heaven. This is cool. How about politics? Well, the early Christians were pacifists. If you look in the New Testament, there isn't a lot about politics. Paul has the thing in Romans where he says, yeah, obey the government. God put these people in charge. If he didn't want people like this in charge, he wouldn't have done it. And so obey the government. That's what you should do. But the early Christians were strict pacifists. They would not fight in a war, especially. They wouldn't raise a weapon. And you think of Jesus' teachings, turn the other cheek. If someone takes your coat, well, give him your shirt. Pacifists. They were pacifists. And this changed later on. St. Augustine, we've just mentioned. He wrote the Confessions. That was his autobiography. He also wrote a book. It's still influential. I mean, it's influential like this week it's influential, called The City of God. And in The City of God, he said that inaction in the face of evil is wrong. And so the earliest Christians were pacifists, but by the time of Augustine, he's saying, hey, if someone's fighting you and they're really, really bad, you have to fight back. You're not turning the other cheek. You're gonna get them. And he called this idea the just war. And we still talk about what this week, the big headline yesterday was Trump was considering attacking Iran to do away with their nuclear program, right? They're trying to develop nuclear weapons. And I suppose that's a bad thing. And for us to sit here and do nothing about it and let them develop, well, yeah, but is it just? And yeah, read the paper articles and they will have hints of Augustinian thought. This guy that was writing almost 2,000 years ago, yeah, we still talk about this. Desert Storm, there was a big discussion. Is this a just war? Well, yeah, they have weapons of mass combat. Weapons of mass destruction, that's what they are. And the propaganda at the time, the newspapers and television made sure to show that these people in the Middle East that we were fighting were horrible, horrible people, right? And some of the stuff they were writing, it wasn't even true, but it made it seem to be a just war. How about aesthetics? I'm going to write the word aesthetics. We're running short on time, and I won't write anything. I'll put some dots, and then you'll know. You can fill it in. Think of the church. So things that are godly, things that look like heaven, that look like saints, those are beautiful. Hymns, songs in praise of God, those are beautiful. Buildings, cathedrals, icons, right? The Greek Orthodox Church especially has their icons. And so there are so many things that you can say, oh yeah, this is beautiful, because it has some relation to God, right? That brings us up to some time ago. We will jump again almost 1,000 years when we get back together. We will be in the 1200s, and we will move quickly through that time. Why am I doing this again? I'm doing this because all of these ideas connect, and they will connect, and this course is connecting with ideas. And I hope you're already seeing, oh yeah, I see how some of this connects. And I've pointed you in some directions. This is still an idea today. And there are other things that are still ideas today, and they influence each other.